While it would be fair to assume that most machine life forms would not have a personality or mind of their own, it also depended on their origin, such as AI or a life form created from precursor species. However, our own race had developed through evolution, not through the building in factories or overtaking prior species. As far as we knew, we were a silicate-based species, and we found a newer species very interesting as it had a carbon base where, in the chemical bonds make very similar bonds, however, there would be considered organic life where we would be seen as a machine life form. This new species was called humanity. They were particularly terrifying, as they seemed to almost not be there. They seemed like nothing more than just a skeleton with a faint outline around them, and when our species first came in contact, it seemed like something out of a horror movie. This, however, in itself, seemed very interesting, as they had a very similar culture. The evolution of both the human race and my own race, the Kosiq, the one thing we could have never guessed was that our species was almost identical, and when contact was first made, and when peace negotiations first began, the human delegate remarked that the Kosiq race and human race looked remarkably similar. This came as a surprise to us, as once again they just appeared to be nothing but bones. As relations with the humans began to increase, and our governments began to work together, we shared more knowledge, and then we found why we saw them so differently. The humans saw within what they called the visible light spectrum, and, as we were closer to inorganic life forms, lived on a higher energy world where gamma radiation was constantly present. We weren't able to see the lower wavelengths of light, rendering humans close to invisible. However, due to the cones in their eyes, they were able to see us as we truly were, and while this might not be the most interesting first encounter, I believe it's something to be noteworthy of. The other thing we found particularly difficult was converting human texts and languages into something we can understand, as a vast majority of human ideas are based off of color. We don't understand what their signals mean, what their flags meant, or what color was to them. We couldn't see anything. By any means, we didn't understand language as we can't see it, and we didn't understand what was being presented from their screens. However, within time and due to collaboration between our species, we were finally able to understand human text and human drawings and diagrams and pictures, and to some extent or another color. It was due to this that we found beyond the horror story of a first impression that the humans were to us, that it turned out that their skin and facial features that surround the bone that we saw was much more detailed and much more elegant, resulting in something that almost every Kosiq could agree would be described as beauty. And weirdly enough, it wasn't due to any technological advances that we found what they looked like. It was an invention that they themselves used to protect themselves from something we so vitally needed. The use of what they called sunscreen would allow us to see them in their true form with a little more ease. Some additions were needed, but as we became able to perceive them in a better light, we found that as both highly visual races, everything from cultural exchange to personal relationships and alliances became easier. I think the best way to sum it up was stated by a human not related to how we see them, but to an entirely different subject that they were talking about. However, I feel is very pertinent to the situation. He stated that sometimes the skeletons in your closet are the things that you're closest to.